Dad, what tool should I get for this hammer? And he would say, you got to learn how to use the hammer first before you decide which hammer you're going to buy, because it doesn't matter. You can hit your thumb with all of them. And that's how diet is. If you don't learn the basics of eating a good, diverse, healthy diet, and you have weight loss surgery, you're not setting yourself up for the most fundamental thing that you can do for your health and your future.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Inventor and author of Primal Habits, Uninflamed, Master of You, and Body Thrive, and soon to be released, The Witch's Cancer Journal.
A weaver of words and ancient worlds into the future.
Plumbing for depth in the playground of your continual reinvention.
A wisdom witch, Agayana Yoini.
And now the moment we've been waiting for is here.
Ringleader of Club Thrive and Wellness Pro Academy.
A freedom warrior, earth mother, proud mama, devoted wife.
Not your grandmother's Ayurveda. Futurist. Biohacker. Guru and goofball.
Where truth and freedom prevail.
Evolving the ancient into the future.
Welcome to the Thrive with Kate Stillman podcast. Made for you by us.
Hello, this is Kate Stillman with the Thrive with Kate podcast, and I'm here with Dr. Terry Simpson, and his website is terrysimpson.com. And yeah, tell people a little bit about your past as a weight loss surgeon, a bariatric doctor, and what you evolved into from there and why.
So I'm a classically trained surgeon, and I've done tons of weight loss surgery. And then as I noticed with all of my weight loss surgery patients that they didn't know how to cook, and many of them didn't know how to cook and didn't cook at home. Many of them ate out, and many of them had no idea to what we should tell them to eat. They would sort of say, well, shall I go back to Atkins, or should I do Weight Watchers, or should I do pick one? And so that began a journey of, there's actually a program in culinary medicine. So I decided to go back and do a certification program in culinary medicine, which they have at Tulane University. And I actually ended up on the board for the Culinary Medicine Advisory Board for a while, because I think this is the important part of the education that was missing. And so now kind of my role is to be a good science communicator about what we know about food and helping people to be on something far more reasonable than the many, many cultish things that are out there. Some of which, there's grains of truth in everything, but shifting the truth out is I think, important, because our gut is kind of where everything begins. If your gut isn't working well, you're just going to be a miserable person. And you can have a lot of problems. We noticed, for example, that a lot of our patients after bypasses ended up with celiac disease. We didn't know if they had that beforehand, but we certainly noticed a high proportion of them having it after, and probably it was because of the way we rearranged their guts. Parts of their small bowel weren't used to the gluten that they were at that point. So little things like that became important.
My background's in Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurveda pathogenesis. You always start with what's happening between the mouth and the anus. Like it's where we start, and it's where we return to in order to do any type of pathogenesis and explain what's happening.
Yeah.
Both with specific issues and then holistically and systemically. So that makes a lot of sense to me, what you're saying.
Well, and Western medicine is finally getting back to that. They're finally realizing that there's a whole lot more going on there that we could do, which will help people. And we are just on the tip of a frontier, which is hard for some people to believe, but we're not. When someone says, "I want to eat more protein," it's like, well, what do you mean more protein? Because that lots of things have protein in them, and certain things can be bad for you if you eat a lot of certain bad things.
Right. I mean, where I sort of landed after writing my fourth book, Uninflamed, was on microbiome diet. It was like, it's the microbiome is an organ. If this organ is about 30% depleted, and most modern humans, like if your heart's only working at 70% of its potential, like no bueno. So how do we rebuild the microbiome? And then what I've noticed in guiding my community at Club Thrive, as people are healing their microbiome, is their taste change radically. Like what they want to eat changes radically as the microbes start to be able to diversify, A, and then B, communicate. We look at the gut as an intelligent and it's very vocal through our cravings and what we want. Then all of a sudden we're wanting the things that are, if we get that we want what our guts want.
Well, we do. And we train our gut, right? So if you train your gut to like hamburgers, French fries, and milkshakes, which would be, if that's my last meal, I would be okay, but it wouldn't be my meal, my meal of the right. Well, but I mean, if that's what you train your gut to like, because that's what you're eating, you will be craving that. And you will have no understanding as to why, because what you're doing is you are feeding the bacteria that like those things, and those bacteria will grow and do it. Then all of a sudden, if you say, you know what, I kind of realized that hamburgers, French fries, and milkshake aren't the best thing for me, and maybe I want to lose weight, maybe I want to have better health, maybe I don't want to have a heart attack at 45, maybe I should start eating some more lentils. Maybe I should start looking at some of these things that are better for me and figuring that out. Then your gut's going to go in rebellion, because now you have the bacteria that are the hamburger, French fries, and milkshake bacteria fighting the rice and lentil bacteria, and what you feed your gut is going to be what you like. We see this in weight loss surgery, because what happens is we completely change your gut microbiome, because they're now without food for a while. They might be on some protein shakes or something early on. So their gut microbiome changes. And that's such a great opportunity to rehab. I call it rehabbing their gut.
Yeah.
Because they've been used to eating this, and now we want them to eat this. And then what's the great news about it is, after a little while, they said, I don't know, I tried some Popeye's chicken. I just didn't like it, but I really wanted this great dal that we make. It's just, so I think it really points to that. So I think we feed our gut, and our gut helps us. And it's very clear. We have known this for centuries. If you have people say, well, I work out, but I have a bad diet. You still have a bad diet, right?
Yeah.
How many of these workout guys that have you seen these, and they're dying at 50 or 60 years old, and they're not, it's kind of like, what are you eating? When you eat a healthy diet, you're going to be a lot healthier in the long run.
Yeah. I've led detoxes a few times a year for a few decades, and what you're saying about the satisfaction of, we'll say, a dysbiotic population in the gut, right? The cravings of a dysbiotic craving in the gut, and how much the satisfaction of whether it's Popeye's chicken or even just pasta, pizza, like just, something that just the body is like, wait, no, the vibration isn't what I want, and I'm not getting the thrill. I wish, I always go back to, but I think it was David Bowie, I Want a New Drug. Like there's this feeling, right, of like, that used to get me high, that used to get me off, and now I really just want that green salad.
Well, and that's part of it, but also think even we have solved the calorie problem in the Western world. I mean, when I grew up, we had malnutrition in this country. We had malnutrition in the Mississippi Delta. We had people who were dying of malnutrition. We had malnutrition in some of the inner cities, and we had severe problem with malnutrition food distribution. We have solved that problem in spades. But part of it, we solved it by ultra-processing food. But what happens is, I think, if you are not getting the nutrients you need through your ultra-processed food, you're going to want more ultra-processed food, because that's where you're getting whatever little nutrients you're going to get. So instead of eating it,
the most like that with obesity is malnutrition. Like they don't have nutrient density. Like they don't have nutrition.
Right? They have a lot of calories. They have a lot of calories,
but so it's
they're malnourished.
It's malnutrition, right? It's like the microbiome's malnourished, right? It's not sustained,
and it's not a healthy microbiome. It's a microbiome again that's used to the things that set them up for a lot of other diseases too.
Yeah,
and
it's not diverse.
It's not diverse, and it's just like biodiversity and monocrops in farming. It's not a great idea. I mean, I realize we have to do some of this to feed 7 billion people on the planet, but if you can afford not to do that, if you can, the more biodiversity, the better.
Yeah, I don't think it has that much to with. I mean, money is. A pound of beans goes a long way. Like a pound of dried beans goes a long way. A pound of seeds to sprout goes a long way. There's, to me, it's not really the money issue. It's more of the adjusting how you live. It's like what I teach in my community is Like make your food, if you're busy, like the busier you are, like the simpler and more diverse your diet should be, and then make your food in the morning for the day. If you like really don't have that much time, and then use tools, like use the Instant Pot, like use something where you can cook beans quickly, or where you can cook, diversity of vegetables in a short.
I always think of it this way. So I always tell my patients, or, if I, as a busy surgeon, have time to cook, and I am the cook in my household, you guys have no excuse.
Yeah.
And, and I don't do a lot of meal prepping, but I have a wide variety of things that I can cook and eat, and that are delicious. And it's not that difficult. It's not that time consuming. I once did this show on NBC where we sent the cast out to get McDonald's for lunch. And then I cooked a meal on their set. My meal was like halibut, some great fruits, and some stuff. And by the time they got back, I had the meal already there and prepared.
Right?
I
mean, that's the, and I find that whole like cook your food in the morning for the day, for people that are really busy, like people that don't have time to cook, then they realize within like a week or two, they have so much more time because they're not running out. They're not running to the grocery store. They're not waiting in line. They're like, it's huge.
Plus, if I come home now, I mean, scrubs are like pajamas, so I can stay in scrubs a lot. But, if I was in the old days when I would have clinic and I would be in the bow tie and the fancy shirt and all of this stuff, I couldn't wait to get out of those clothes and in my pajamas. And I can cook in my pajamas. It's really hard to go out in your pajamas to eat. It's just, it's frowned on. Plus, there are much better restaurants now than there were 10 years ago, right? We have some great restaurants that have some great things. They make food that is amazing. And we have, it used to be that if you were a vegetarian going out, you might find this kind of awful looking piece of broccoli and a potato or something like that. And nowadays we have some great restaurants. They're not going to let you in there in your pajamas.
Hopefully not.
Right.
Hopefully not. So I have a tale of two cousins. So I have one cousin that had gastric bypass, and she lost about 100 pounds. And then she was doing great for like a year or two, maybe 2, and exercising a lot, and was more social and outgoing and that. And then relationships changed in her life, and then she put the weight back on, like not all of it, but maybe 60 or so pounds. I have another cousin, same age. We're all around the same age, who's been really heavy her whole adult life since they both were, since probably teenagers. Different sides of the family, they're not related at all. And the other one asked me about the gastric bypass surgery because she hasn't done it. And I have a client who's in Wellness Pro Academy with us who just basically wanting to do where you've landed is like nutritional coaching with people who've had bypass surgery or some other surgery, who are like a year or two out and have had a lot of trouble with digestion, and a lot of them have put a lot of the weight back on. And so she was reading me the litany of statistics the other day on where are people a year, 2, 3, 4 out of these surgeries, and what are these secondary problems. You mentioned celiac. I have a few questions that are sort of wrapped up in my tale of two cousins, because I think a lot of people can relate. I think everybody in their life at this point has family and friends that have had surgery, family and friends that are interested in this surgery. And I think there's a lot of missing information. And I think it's such I know for me with, even with my cousins, like it's a very delicate conversation. Weight is I would say in many cases even more delicate to talk about than cancer. We have a lot of cancer in my family. I've had cancer, like a lot more. It's genetic in my family, so there's like a lot of that. And it's like I notice the weight conversations are much more under the rug and hidden than even the most lethal of modern diseases. So a few questions, like one are like, let's get into where people are actually at 1, 2, 3, 4 years out of surgery, and then let's also get into how do some people decide to not do, like, that are at that point where they want to get surgery, but they decide they're going to give it one last ditch effort and try what you are teaching them, like really learn how to cook for themselves, like really learn the things that they need to start feeding themselves in order to change. And like what causes someone to be able to do that? What's the differentiating factor?
They're all typically very desperate. You know, when they come to the surgical doorstep, they are desperate, and they realize that they have been on 1,000 different diets. They've been on every low-carb diet there is. They have been on variations of Weight Watchers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could name the list of them. And they all feel like they're failures because all of those diets promote the skinny person who's had that, whatever diet it is,
Right.
and so the approach that I take is, hey, if you cook, you're going to do so much better for yourself than if you leave your cooking to someone else. It's the most important thing that you can do. And unless I'm your cook, you probably want to have somebody that's going to be very healthy cooking for you, and that person should be you. And B, there are 1,000 ways you can lose weight with diet. You can lose weight on the carnivore diet. You can lose weight on the Twinkie diet. Lose weight on the McDonald's diet. You can lose weight on co-authored a book about a beer and sausage diet. Not to tell people to do that, but to show how ridiculous this was because, this guy lost. I mean, we have a whole book about it. But it's like nobody would suggest, some might suggest some of those are okay, that's a way to sustain health afterwards. So what diet are they going to go on? So the Mediterranean diet, as you know, it's a dietary pattern. It's not what they eat in the Mediterranean. Because in the Mediterranean, they have McDonald's now. But the Mediterranean diet has 9 components of it: fruits, vegetables, legumes, fish, some red meat, and alcohol, etc. Some of those things we want less of to 0. Some of those things you want more of. And it's a 9-point scale to make it sort of simple. It's not all that simple. What we found was this: so we followed a number of people who had different weight loss surgeries: lap band, gastric bypass, gastric sleeve. And we looked at their Mediterranean diet scores. Those who did 5 or better on a Mediterranean diet scale were in the bell curve, where the 50% curve or greater for weight loss. 4 was a scattergram all over the place. 0 to 3 points, meaning they didn't do a lot of things that they should have been eating, they were on the worst part of the curve. They would either have regained their weight or regained portion of their weight. So what it told us is, whatever surgical tool you use, if you don't combine that with a healthy eating pattern, and the healthy eating pattern isn't carnivore and it isn't some other it isn't beer and sausage, it is, and it is not buying protein powders every day and throwing in an apple occasionally. It really is a very basic healthy diet that you can incorporate. They do exceedingly well. And when you talk to the people who have the 0 to 3, and most of them, frankly, at 0, it's like, well, I thought I should be drinking more shakes. Well, I thought I should be I thought rice was bad for me. I thought I shouldn't eat this, that. And they have these weird ideas. And it's like, anything can be good for you, but you need certain things in your diet because you need this diversity. And I always tell them, I would like you to have 30 different plants a week in your diet. They say, how can I get 30 plants? Well, actually, let's do that. We can actually do that pretty easily. Mm-hmm. And that has been the only thing. And it's like, it's regardless of the surgery. The surgery is just a tool. It's kind of like me. So my dad was a great, built our house, could do all those home things. I'm horrible at that. But it would be like me saying, Dad, what tool should I get for this hammer? And he would say, you got to learn how to use the hammer first before you decide which hammer you're going to buy, because it doesn't matter. You can hit your thumb with all of them, And that's how diet is. If you don't learn the basics of eating a good, diverse, healthy diet, and you have weight loss surgery, you're not setting yourself up for the most fundamental thing that you can do for your health and your future.
So the relapse rates of weight gain after surgery, it's because people haven't been, I guess what I'm wondering is, it's like, how much of the, here's an example. Before my mom had hip surgery, I did a lot of like anti-inflammation practices with her, both like in the kitchen, on the yoga mat, meditation, like very multi-pronged approach, very, like Ayurveda, yoga, meditation type tools that affecting and she was highly motivated because she was going to have a joint replaced, and she was nervous because it was the first time. So she did everything. Like she took my list. She did everything every day. By the time she went in for surgery, she had no more pain. So it was much easier for her after the surgery to keep doing those things.
Sure.
Right, because it had already been set in place. So what I'm curious about, is it more of like when people sign up for the surgery, are they like, my last hurrah, like pizza, burgers?
Some do.
Like,
Some do. We call that Last Supper syndrome. Yeah, some do. And typically, you have a 6-month period with a patient before then, to which we say, we're going to teach you all of these things. Every week, you're going to have a meeting with me, and we're going to go through a different topic, a different food, maybe a different recipe, and you are going to change your diet before surgery. That's the goal. Became the goal for that, because many insurance companies require a 6-month medically supervised diet. So this became the entree to say, and most of the time it was, well, you have to lose weight before surgery. It's like, our goal is not for you to lose weight. Our goal is for you to learn how to eat better. The surgery will help the weight loss. Surgery will force the weight loss. But if you eat really, really well, and now your microbiome has changed and you're craving those things and you're liking, all of a sudden now you have these wonderful spices and flavors that you don't, face it, brown meat is kind of tasteless. It's just sort of this, it's just tasteless. And you can have all of these wonderful flavors they've never had before.
yeah.
And that those become the successful patients. It was just very clear. Those were the ones who became successful. Those who said, well, I'm just going to have pizza, beer, and hamburgers, but I'm going to have less of them. That's not a successful long-term solution. Very much like hip surgery. You learn physical therapy before.
Yeah.
You learn those practices before, you put them in practices afterwards. Those patients do great. The patients that are going from a wheelchair and not doing anything and don't want to do anything and think the hip surgery is going to be the miracle for them, they never get out of a wheelchair.
So for the people who've, I always air quote the tried everything, because whenever I'm talking to anyone who's air quote tried everything, I can give them 10 things that they've never even heard of. Right. So for the person that's tried everything and they're desperate, like how much is it, I guess when I look at like Mediterranean diet and whatnot, like how much of it is it like that they're maybe eating real food, but then also having a lot of the ultra processed? Then maybe they have like a love affair with either alcohol or baked goods or.
You have to be honest about that, because it's sort of like so for example, to get a Mediterranean diet point for vegetables, you have to eat 9 ounces of vegetables a day. Mediterranean diet for fruit, that's 9 ounces of fruit a day. 2 ounces of legumes a day. 9 ounces of whole grains a day. That's just 4 of the categories. There's not much room for eating a lot of other stuff.
Right.
And there's a maximum on alcohol of about, with the equivalent of about 5 ounces of wine, which is maybe 1 shot or 1 beer. But, and less is better. That's the maximum. That's one of those where you go less. Some people say, I don't drink. I say, great, you don't have to drink. You get a point for not drinking. You already ate one Mediterranean diet. So those are things that if they're getting this, there's not a lot of room there to say, boy, I really want to whatever, And we never want to get to where people feel they're denied food. But I also say, I tell them this story. I had this patient once named Charlie C. Now, Charlie C's mother was Mrs. C of Mrs. C's Candy. He hated chocolate. He's been dead for a long time. He hated chocolate. And so I was operating on him and, got to talk to him and operated him on Mother's Day, 1990. Yeah. Mother's Day, 1990. Emergency operation. And I said, you really hate all chocolate? He says, American chocolate's horrible, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, it's Mother's Day and my mom was still alive. And what do I get her? Well, I'll get her this crap yet then. So he told me there are some really great chocolates out there. They're very hard to find. And that became the key toward this. If you really love chocolate, which is fine, there's some good things in chocolate. Don't get American crap chocolate. Get really good chocolate. Because if you get really good chocolate, you will enjoy it, you will like it, and you will become a chocolate snob. As opposed to, if you have a bowl of M&Ms there, you could overwhelm your taste buds with how bad they are with one handful, and then you'll want another and another and another. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to say, this is a great Belgian chocolate. This is delicious. It came from Namibia. This was hand-selected. You want that. You want people to become snobby about it, because that means that they care about their body if they care about their taste buds, instead of overwhelming taste buds with crap, which is what we do. We put too much salt on everything. We put too much sugar in everything. We overwhelm our taste buds, and all we want are Doritos. which I actually don't like, strangely.
Go, not strangely. But so in Club Thrive, where I landed as, I was an Ayurvedic medicine practitioner and yoga teacher, and over time I really found that
I'm still not good at my down dog. I'm still not that. I mean, my yoga instructor always comes back and always takes my hips and pulls them back.
Opens it up.
Yeah.
Good. So I really noticed when I would lead these group detoxes that groups of people made habit changes a lot faster than when I would be working with one-on-one. Like even with the same people working one-on-one versus a group making habit changes together. And so that really fostered how I decided to work with people in the next decade. And now that I'm going into my third decade of work, I've settled on Club Thrive Global. And one of the things that we do in Club Thrive Global about 4 times a year is a 5-day fast mimicking diet. And we more or less use a microbiome diet in that time. So yeah, like lots of polyphenols. So we're getting lots of the spices. It doesn't matter if you have dark chocolate or caffeine or any of that, because we're getting the polyphenols in. High fiber, just not much food, right? 500-600 calories a day for 5 days. Because I have a global community, get a lot of different people in there. We're intergenerational. And some people come in with a lot of weight to lose, right? Some people come in with whatever, 60, 80 pounds to lose. Other people, 25 to 50 pounds to lose. Other people are just like the last 10. And then some people are at their optimal body weight, but they may have bigger life goals and they're in Club Thrive for other reasons. And what I've noticed because we started fast mimicking diet as a group close to a year and a half ago. And we were already doing seasonal detoxes. So we had about 20 years of, our own little longitudinal citizen data on that. What I noticed with the fast mimicking diet was people could do it. Like almost anyone, no matter how overweight they are, could do it. The other thing that I really noticed was that the microbiome changes really rapidly. So often after, there's like this intense craving for something, and they feel like they've fallen off the wagon, right? So there's this like a bit of a rebound effect. But what I've started to notice with that is it's almost like the dysbiotic microbiome is getting some little last hurrah and craving, and then there's another clearing that happens about a week or two after that. But then what we notice is that then in the next few months, right? So even though there might be like a little like backlash rebound, at some point right now I'm thinking like there's nothing wrong with that because it's seeming to serve another function. The few months after the fast mimicking diet, people's cravings dramatically change, where they're like, oh my gosh, I don't need a pastry, or I'm not into the sugar, or wow, we're not that into alcohol anymore, or and we're seeing these, I would say, losing of addictive type cravings in a way that I wasn't seeing before fast mimicking diet. And my sense is it has everything to do with a level of the dysbiotic microbiome.
Well, I think you're right. Because you're going through fasting, so you're not feeding the little creatures what they want, and you're encouraging other little creatures, and they're in a war. I mean, this is this war going on.
It's a terrain war. It's like the old-fashioned war. Right. Like this is all terrain.
Right. It is, and it's all boots on the ground, and it really is one of those things where we notice it in weight loss surgery, because when we're in weight loss surgery, they have this period of fasting enforced because they've had weight loss surgery, so they're not eating, they're doing some drinking, protein shakes or something to kind of keep their muscle mass up. And I always tell them protein shakes are like formula or mother's milk. You're not going to be on it forever. You shouldn't be on a protein shake forever. There's really good sources of protein out there. Protein shake is, unless you have some real need for it, like you have short gut syndrome, etc., whole different story. Anyway. So yeah, that's what's going on. Is their bacteria are starving. You're feeding some really good bacteria, and now they're coming back and they're starting to eat again. And it's like we're competing for these nutrients, and who's going to win? And someone's going to win,
Yeah.
But the bacteria aren't going to be happy, and then ultimately, if you rehab their gut and rebuild back a really healthy microbiome for them, where the guts will get the fiber and they'll turn them into those short-chain fatty acids and the butyrates. Not only are you decreasing the risk of cancer, you are improving their overall mental function. You're decreasing their risks of, there's a fair bit of data about autoimmune function in the gut. You're doing a lot of good, healthy things for them as much as they can do. It may not be everything that they need. They may still need guys like me to do surgery on them for different things, but it's the best that they can do. And when people are no longer victims of the food that they eat, but are empowered by cooking and empowered by making their own food and their own choices, that's the best control they can have.
So what's your sense of why the group is so much more effective? And have you seen any data on it? Because when the same people try to do it on their own, say timing.
Support groups always work better. Support groups always
it is.
work.
Does it go back to we're an ultra social species, so it's much easier to ride the group momentum?
Yeah, I mean, and people, we're sort of consultants in these groups, but the groups also function with each other because we don't know what George is going through, but George and Sally now have a similar thing they're going through, and they can kind of work that out. And you never want to make the group unhappy. You want to be a part of this and be a good member of the community. And that's different. One-on-one, I leave you after I'm done with the Zoom, and it's like, there's ice cream in the fridge.
Right.
Whereas if I come back to the group and say, yeah, there was some ice cream in the fridge, but I didn't really want to, or I had some, Father, forgive me, I won't sin again, or whatever it is that they do. I mean, I think, but when it's one-on-one, I mean, you can imagine I've heard some very interesting excuses in my life, and I don't know why I didn't lose weight. You're 400 pounds. You burn 4,500 calories a day. You did not just have salads and Diet Cokes this last week. I'm sorry. That's, well, maybe it's my hormones. Yes, it's the mouth hormone. I'm a surgeon. I'm not gentle with that stuff.
So I'd love to just in closing ask you any favorite episodes of your podcast that you want to point people to. We know that podcast listeners are podcast listeners.
Well, my podcast is called Fork You. Fork University, and it is a lot of stuff about the Mediterranean diet and how to implement it in their lives and some historical data. Because when I'm online, I'm on TikTok a lot. I've got a bunch of followers on there, and I've always seemed to be battling the carnivore people who are young men who can eat anything and think, well, my arteries are fine. I mean, look at all the way they look at my abs, and it's like, I love your abs, but man, you would love my arteries at my age. Trust me.
Yeah.
Do you want my arteries? Well, you could have both. Yes, you can, but you can't have both eating the crap you're eating. So those seem to be and people are desperate. So people say, what? Jordan Peterson only eats meat, salt, and water. That's what I should eat. Look at him. He looks weird is what I think he looks like. But people want the easy answer. And the easy answer is cook. Treat your body well. You're not going to be perfect. Try and get diversity in the things that you eat. There is so much great stuff and spices and delicious things out there. Don't be afraid to try a vegan restaurant that is known for doing things because you're going to get some incredible flavors. Don't be afraid to try and cook that. It's fine. And it's far better than hamburgers, French fries, and a milkshake, which, is my childhood love of everything.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I look forward to listening to some of Fork You and referring some people, especially those that want to, just want to make the shift.
I think it's important. I think, like I said, first thing is learning how to cook, and people are intimidated by that. Nobody wants, but it's just one of the best things you can do for yourself.
It was actually I want to mention one more thing. It was I guess he was a cousin of my dad. Him and his wife flip-flopped. So he retired and she went back to work. And so he read The Joy of Cooking. He's like, I just learned how to cook by reading The Joy of Cooking and just more or less making every recipe that looked interesting. And I was like, that's amazing. You learned to cook. And he's like the smart Jewish accountant. And he looks at me, he's like, it's a manual. It tells you what to do. There's nothing amazing about it. And it just landed on me, in this way of like, yeah, right. It's just a manual.
It is. But the fun part of cooking is when you start saying, wonder what I don't have fenugreek. What do I substitute here?
Yeah.
Or you know what? I've got a lot of this. You know, maybe and learning that. I mean, the first part is just getting over the intimidation of learning how to cut an onion. Get the chopper. I mean, the first part is that stuff, and then it's like not being afraid of heat. And I mean, there are all these steps. Buy an induction. Please get an induction. Don't do gas anymore. I mean,
I love my induction.
isn't it the best?
It's the best.
It's the best. You know?
Steam oven, the induction. Yeah, the tools are so fun.
They are. I do a lot of sous vide. I do a lot of sous vide cooking. So I think that it's just there are some great fun tools out there, but I'm a guy, I like gadgets, and you know, my kitchen has lots of gadgets that I don't need because, you know, I do that. But I finally got rid of my pineapple core when I realized I hadn't used it in 20 years.
Funny. Well, I'll have you back and we'll talk recipes.
All right. Sounds great.
Okay, everyone. This has been Terry Simpson, and his podcast is Fork U, with just the letter U. I love the title, Terry. TerrySimpson.com. And this is Kate with Thrive with Kate.